In part 1 of this miniseries, we covered Asha Sharma's charm offensive. It's been a successful one, but now we cover the reason why she built up all that PR, and it begins with a quote. "We won't succeed by hiding hard truths, nor will we succeed by doing the same thing and expecting different results." So if you think that this is Xbox going back to the good old days, no, it absolutely isn't, because those days are quite literally gone. But where it all really led up to was on Wednesday, when Xbox published a memo to staff. In the memo, we learned the next 100 days would need to be a, and I quote, reset. That staff needed to hear hard truths that were holding them back. That very same day, the press reported plans for an unknown number of layoffs and maybe even a studio closure. Xbox have spent the last 100 days trying to show you how they've changed, but now, for the next 100 days, they're already back to planning their 4th year of layoffs. Bloomberg cites insiders in this one, and the cuts are also planned to, quote, significantly slash budgets for marketing and some other areas of the business. But of course, we knew that this was coming. For the last few weeks, executives at Xbox have been parroting the "not in a healthy spot" line. And The Verge's sources actually suggest more. Cuts could even involve a studio closure or changes to the Xbox studio lineup. Now, that resurfaced a claim from the giant bombcast that up to 1,000 staff could be impacted by this. None of this is surprising to me. But what may be a bit of a surprise is that before the layoffs have even happened, Xbox are already trying to justify them, and that is very different to the way they have operated with layoffs before. Next 100 days, Xbox reset. That is the title for the memo from CEO Asha Sharma and Chief Content Officer Matt Booty to Xbox staff. Now, this memo doesn't mention layoffs whatsoever. Rather, it is a call for understanding. What it does is it reviews the last 100 days where the work has, quote, started to revive Xbox. And all credit where it's due, some of that stuff is real. Tidbits like them doing more updates in this new era than they had in the prior year, talking about more active partners than ever, that Game Pass is back to growth, and that players are being listened to. Or at the very least, feel listened to. FanFest, of course, is coming back, and the Xbox Showcase put the strength of their pipeline on display. It was a pretty damn good showcase. There's exclusive games that give people something to look forward to, and of course, all the while, the likes of Forza Horizon 6 just show absolutely huge success. But of course, that stuff was in the past, and for the future, staff now need to be aware of the reality of Xbox's situation. Because as much as all of that stuff is good news, numbers talk, right? Leadership claims we won't succeed by hiding hard truths, nor will we succeed by doing the same thing and expecting different results. I think that's fair enough. So the next thing for us to do is to understand what those hard truths are. And I've got to be real, this is the type of thing we don't usually get. Let's dive into the numbers then. As always with things like this, before any interesting numbers, they like to recap their wins. So they boast about Xbox having 1 billion players a year with 72 billion hours played across all platforms. There's a caveat, which is that China and some other places are exempt. Beyond just play, there's shows and films like Fallout and Minecraft that are putting wins on the board for Xbox. That all seems good, and it's especially good to them because they are framing their biggest competition in the market right now as attention. And they don't stop at games either. It's TVs, apps, any format that you can name. All of that stuff is competition that could take away Xbox's players. That language about attention seems to come directly from Xbox's new strategy boss, Matthew Ball. So yes, we've got Matt Ball and we've got Matt Booty. Collecting all the mats. Basically, the attention economy is his big theory here. It's been the spine of his yearly reports, it's his answer for why games are struggling, and now it's Xbox policy. We've got some hard financial data from Xbox, and that is quite new because their numbers are usually buried inside Microsoft's larger reporting, and that's meant that we haven't had much transparency into how the company's actually doing. So, for the last 5 years, they've spent over $20 billion on investments in content, platforms, and hardware, and that's of course not counting the Activision Blizzard King acquisition. Slight problem for them, though, is that revenue declined by, quote, nearly $500 million in that time. That's brutal, and it puts them at a 3% accountability margin. Now, obviously, there'll be some internal accounting tricks in there, but for the sake of argument, that means Xbox are about 3% profitable, and that is absolutely devastating. It's below the rate that you could get just putting your money into a savings account or into some relatively low-risk bonds. So if you're Microsoft and you're thinking about capital allocation, you're almost certainly not going to look at Xbox and think, wow, That's fantastic. Now that phrase, accountability margin, might be ringing a bell for you, and well, yeah, it should be. And that's because a week ago, Asha Sharma told Bloomberg Tech this.
My mandate is not 30% accountability margin. It's not enterprise software margins. It's to be the #1 gaming and entertainment company, and that's what we're going to go do.
Now, seemingly, she still does have some margins to hit because she's adamant that 3% is not enough. She says, going forward, this cannot continue. And let's be real with ourselves, 3% is really, really bad, and yes, this cannot continue. Next, we get to hardware, and I have to be real with you guys, this is the ugly one. Sharma explains that from autumn to February, storage components doubled in price, and that by holiday 2027, they expect prices to be 5 times what they were in 2025. The same also goes for memory, and where it's interesting is, she claims that decisions made over the last 5 years left Xbox more impacted by this than other companies. Now, they claim to still be committed to Helix, but delivering it will require, quote, a new business model and partnerships for hardware, and that's because they aren't even making enough consoles right now, as in, they're unable to make enough Xboxes to handle the current customer base. That's not all that many units in the grand scheme of things, and one of the big reasons why is, well, these companies sign contracts with their various suppliers. And that's where Xbox is passed as a problem. They needed to be more profitable, so they did not sign up to huge contracts of similar volumes to, say, the likes of Sony or Nintendo, and that means that now they're in an even weaker spot. So on the hardware front, it's extremely rough, but it does line up with what Sharma told Fortune earlier in the week, which was that players won't pay thousands for a console, and that we could be seeing, quote, radically different business models that we never expected. Who knows, maybe we will have phone or internet style contracts for how we acquire our consoles. Maybe they'll be less performant, and perhaps at the very worst, well, it could end up in a little bit of a ad-supported Amazon Kindle situation, which I think is a bit of a personal hell. Then we hit the people impacted by the incoming layoffs. The memo praises the studio system that produced this weekend's showcase. Quote, a reliable pipeline of first and third-party exclusives and new IP are critical to our success. That's all well and good, but Sharma thinks that things aren't good enough. Xbox are stewards of, quote, industry-defining franchises, but have not, quote, adequately funded them to compete and win. Halo 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. That statement very much resonates with me, and I'll leave it at that. Perhaps it's the same for you. The balance between these and their investment priorities will have to be reassessed, and what that means is layoffs and cancellations. It's the same story with their systems and just company backend as well. And one framing stands out in particular, that Xbox have, quote, become too reliant on vendors to operate our systems and must become more self-reliant as an engineering culture to build for the future. Honestly, that does make a hell of a lot of sense to me, and I do think that tracks with where a lot of software is going to be going. So in plain terms, that's basically her talking about paying third parties for tools or support. Have you had awful support experiences with Xbox? I've sure heard from many of you that that has been the case, and whenever I put on my Warcraft hat for running the other channel, I remember keenly a story of Blizzard customer service, being farmed out to other companies, and in particular one being basically shut down in the way that it used to be with Blizzard and then outsourced, I believe, to a firm in Egypt. To put it mildly, the Activision Blizzard related customer service stories are coming in frequently enough that I could almost run a full channel about it. I suppose it would be some sort of grim comedy. But one thing you'll notice in that is she's talking a little bit like an engineering leader. And of course, that's not a surprise. The previous org she headed up at Microsoft was Core AI. And basically that is, move fast, keep everything internal, and deliver updates fast regardless of scale, which, in fairness to her, at least for the easy and low-hanging fruit, that's happened over the last 100 days. But while it's true games are software, they are of course also pieces of art, and the art bit won't always line up with the needs of the engineering culture. The final suggestion is probably the most interesting part of all of this. You see, while generally they say they'll be rebuilding and reviewing, there is still the potential for more mergers and acquisitions to deliver on the future that she's laying out, and she says this is across hardware, PC, mobile, and streaming, because Xbox can afford that somehow. It's just there's other things they can't afford. And so, across the whole memo, there is a clear trend, and it is this. What Xbox have been doing just isn't good enough. One statement in the studio section seems to underline Sharma and Booty's point. Here's the quote. "We expanded our studio system when we needed a pipeline of content to meet multiple strategies across subscription, streaming, and devices. In the process, we have found ourselves overextended as we executed on changing strategies in a landscape of more readily available content." Overextended is basically them setting up that layoffs are due to happen. Being real with you, I do also feel that that statement is broadly right. And of course, that's a reflection of Xbox not really being ran in a strategically cohesive way over the years. And really, this is why they keep talking about a reset. The idea is that Xbox were great, but they lost their way, especially in those 5 years where the revenue fell. So basically, it is a fairly simple make Xbox great again strategy. They basically kept expanding, and as they expanded, which of course will have increased loads of their costs, they also kept changing strategies, and that meant that they bought things for one purpose, then had their strategy change after the fact, leading of course to chaos and mess. But here's the thing that as a community we really need to understand. Everything Sharma is talking about as being a hard reality, the constraints are set by Microsoft. The hard reality is set by Microsoft. As CEO of Xbox, that's the reality she has to operate in. Across 5 years, excluding Activision Blizzard King, there was $20 billion in games investment. All that for a 3% profit. Now, a since-denied report did suggest that buying Activision Blizzard King was the alternative to just closing Xbox entirely, and that's because Xbox, in addition to losing this generation, also lost the generation before it. They didn't have the hardware sales. Console production took a back seat because Xbox needed to be more profitable. The 30% margin was effectively a target. That meant the end of exclusivity and the entire "this is an Xbox" thing. That all spread from a reality set by Microsoft and their risk tolerance. Their tolerance for short-term pain in service of a medium to long-term strategy. Now here's the thing, right? Their multi-platform strategy is still in effect. They've just realized that they can't market Xbox by saying that Xbox is weak and you can get their games anywhere. So their new plan is to market perfectly to the Xbox fan base. But in terms of the other calls they'll make, well, it's all still within that same reality set by Microsoft. So the easy way to put this is, their strategy is to have their cake and eat it. Elsewhere in the memo, Game Pass is said to be recovering after more than 8 months of decline. That's of course because back in October, Microsoft pushed for higher margins, and Xbox quite simply didn't have any other levers they could pull. They couldn't just rush out games, especially when a unique storm of a Call of Duty failure hit their business. Think about then that investment in franchises and studios that Sharma says she wants. Xbox have spent the last 4 years somewhat being stripped to the bone, cancelling long in development games like, say, that MMO from ZeniMax that had apparently been in development for a long time, but was actually said to be an excellent game according to people who claim they know what Xbox leadership thought about that project. They've been doing other things, like culling studios, and the impact of those cost-cutting actions led to staff banding together and massive teams like, say, Overwatch and World of Warcraft unionizing. But at the end of the day, 3% is not enough. There is no real way they can get a huge influx of money. That means more layoffs, cancellations, and studio closures are coming. Now, I want you to think about the whole 5 years and $20 billion in investment, right? Think about that. By comparison, Microsoft intends to spend 10 times that on AI alone in just 2026. And to give you an example of the economics in this, xAI's Colossus 1 data center is said to have cost around $8 to $9 billion. Because of the compute crisis, the shortage of compute, they are currently renting that to Anthropic for $1 billion a month. And then there's the Google deal with xAI, which is pretty much another billion a month. Basically, that is the return on investment that you can get just by building compute-focused data centers. So in a world where the likes of Colossus 1 can quite literally repay itself in a matter of months, what do you think about money going into Xbox? Because at the end of the day, opportunity cost is a thing. They only have so much capital to throw into things. Why throw into Xbox when you can throw it into something that has a demonstrably higher rate of return, a faster rate of return, and is in comparison to the 3% accountability margin that we've just heard about. But where Sharma's position gets even more grimly funny is if we connect the dots. The memory that Xbox cannot afford is the memory that Microsoft's AI data centers are buying up. Somehow, Asha Sharma left her job of 2 years as president of core AI product at Microsoft and is surprised that hardware prices are up. I do not believe that she is surprised about hardware prices being up, to state the obvious. But what it all does add up to is pretty much the same position. An Xbox that has to cut costs, that has to become more profitable. It seems Sharma has been given enough wiggle room to operate on a longer time horizon than Bond and Spencer were. And that probably will be good for Xbox, but it absolutely doesn't mean it's the end of pain. There is going to be more pain, it's just that it will be pain alongside a positive story of renewal and appealing to core fans and making names of things all caps again. That's what it was like in the past, and if modernity's taught us anything, if you want people to get on your side, just say, current day bad, past was better, make future like past. Thumbs up. I guess that's how it all works. But with that said, when the new leadership took over, Booty made a promise. Here it is, quote, "To be clear, there are no organizational changes underway for our studios." By the time he was there, maybe they were being planned in his head, but they certainly weren't underway, so he didn't lie. But it's just over 100 days later, and now we're in an era of describing Xbox as, quote, "not in a healthy spot," of saying that a reset is needed. That's because fundamentally what Sharma is proposing is, in its very essence, no different to what has been materially happening over the last 5 years. It just has a different coat of paint. They are fighting an attention war by doing bold strategies such as cutting the people who made the things worth paying attention to. She's maybe got a different set of marching orders from Microsoft and has more latitude to exert her own leadership judgment. It seems that she's decently trusted by Nadella and the rest at the top of Microsoft. Perhaps that level of trust means that, yes, Sharma is a company woman, but they actually do trust her to use her own judgment to push back on some of the maybe short-sighted things from the board, and maybe it's the case that the board quite simply didn't trust Spencer and Bond in that same way. Sharma's been building this new strategy out of the tangled web of everything that came before. Staff have been trying to build a business that could survive Microsoft's scrutiny, all because the line had to go up. It did not go up. And what happens if Xbox does not deliver now? I think there's a better question. How much more can Xbox be cut? I'll leave you with that and a simple recommendation. What we've talked about here is the reality of the situation. What we talked about in part 1 is the charm offensive. And now is actually a brilliant time to go and watch part 1, because you can see the difference between the charm offensive and reality.